All right, here on the Ethics Committee, we have two public servants, and they're not elected officials, so it'd be nicer to them. They're most likely just trying to do their job and have political masters telling them what to do. Most likely check this
And
out.
Madame
Angus.
Kovacevic for coming today. I want to ask Madame Kovacevic about April 10th. Craig Kielburger writes personally to Bill Morneau. Hey, Bill. Hope this finds you, Nancy, Henry, Claire, Edward, and Grace enjoying some well-deserved downtime. And then he pitches this $12 million project. So he pitches it directly to the minister. And 11 days later, it gets approved. Isn't that an extraordinarily short time to approve a project of this nature?
Is that for me, sir?
Yes.
Okay, starting from the top, I was only made aware of Mr. Kielburger's email to the minister when all the emails were revealed as part of our commitment to the Standing Department of Finance. In terms of when the proposal was approved, remember, I would remind committee members that on the date of the announcement of the student package, the $9 billion, of which this $900 million Canada Student Service Grant was a part, there was no approval by the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance for anything related to WE. The approval was strictly setting aside $900 million, a high-level announcement, and a direction to the minister responsible at ESDC to return with the proposal.
Okay.
That's all I can speak to.
That's interesting because on April 21st, in the Finance Minister's Annex 4, under its headline, Minister of Finance Decision, Bill Morneau allocates $900 million for the CSSG, but also $12 million. It says, in addition, the minister decides to provide up to $12 million to Employment and Social Development Canada to support the We Social entrepreneurship. So how is it you didn't know that Minister Morneau had just approved $12 million? This is 11 days that this project is on his desk to be actually in a government binder. That's a really, really short turnaround time, don't you think?
Let me correct the record. The Minister of Finance verbally approved what I just mentioned, the $900 million set aside and the direction for the ESDC minister return. He did not approve anything related to WE, neither did the Prime Minister at this juncture. This paper that you're looking at in Annex 4 was what we in the department had put together, which he never signed. We only received a verbal approval on the first two things.
Yeah, I saw that. It says Annex 4, he didn't sign, but he wrote okay. So is that how business is done? Because I see that the $912 million is referenced by the Prime Minister. They don't just refer to 900, they refer to $912 million. And I ask this question because this social entrepreneurship program had nothing to do with the pandemic. It may have been a crisis financing for the Kielburger operation, but the social entrepreneurship was not a response to the pandemic. So the fact that in his binder he signed off on this issue, I find is really extraordinary, because you yourself referred to Minister Morneau's relationship with the Kielburgers as besties. It seems to me that something was going wrong here when $912 million is listed as having been approved. Was it approved verbally only? How is that credible?
Two things there. So I certainly did not characterize Minister Morneau's relationship with the Kielburgers as besties. I'm happy to speak to that email if you like, but that is absolutely not what I said. And again, I iterate that Minister Morneau and the Prime Minister, in advance of the April 26th announcement, did not sign off on anything related to WE. What I can tell you, sir, is that in my briefing to Minister Morneau on the 21st, where he verbally agreed on the $900 million and he verbally agreed on ESDC minister to return, because we had attached the $12 million proposal to the briefing note without any information, I had raised the specter of, if we wanted to get out fast, this organization might be able to have some immediate placements while the Minister of ESDC takes, a few more days and weeks to conceive a design and return to cabinet. The minister did not agree to it at that point in time.
Okay, but the minister was the one who received it. He received it from Craig Kielburger, someone who hired his daughter, someone who had flown him around the world, and it's listed in there that he's approved it. I'm concerned, Madame, because on April 17th, Minister Chagger meets with Craig Kielburger and Sophia Marquez, and they are briefed at that time about the details. Minister Chagger says they aren't, but according to Sophia Marquez's notes, they were given some key details. My concern is that because they had such a close relationship, maybe other organizations were not considered. For example, the very next day, you tell your colleagues not to call Shopify because EDSC has a better way. Well, that's the day after the meeting with Craig Kielburger. April 19th, Madame Warnock sends an urgent email to Craig Kielburger, and then she debriefs your department. And then that Monday, within 3 days, that Monday, there's already a meeting with the Kielburgers on the Kielburger plan, and nobody else. Shopify is not involved. YMCA is not involved. All the names that we've been heard are not involved. It is only from that moment on, it's the Kielburgers. And I'm not blaming you. I just think that the desire to satisfy a government that was so close to the Kielburgers, other decisions weren't checked out. For example, Shopify. Why were they dropped?
So I would say, sir, once again, the $912 million that you referenced was a mistake in the communications background. It is still $900 million. No WE proposal was approved by the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance at that point. With respect to why or not other organizations, including Shopify, you will see very fluid in my emails over a period of 10 days. In fact, we went through many potential organizations as we're trying to land both a design and the potential delivery partner.
But none of them were spoken to. Nobody was spoken to, only the Kielburgers.
We've run out of time on that round.
Thank you.
We'll need to move to the second round now, and this is a 5-minute round. Mr. Poilievre.
Well, what do you think about that? Leave your comments down below. Next up, we have Pierre Poilievre, and he's on task as normal. And after that, we have MP Barrett.
To start with, my question is for Madame Fox. Was the Deputy Prime Minister ever briefed on the proposed Canada Student Service Grant and the awarding of that project to the WE charity?
She was not briefed by me, no.
All right. How is it possible that there are numerous points of evidentiary confirmation that she was briefed in the earlier package we received, including an email from Mr. Kielburger, which says that you were planning to brief the Deputy Prime Minister?
So I can't speak to emails that I didn't draft. I think what I can say is that my role was to be prepared to brief on everything and anything during the COVID period. And at times we got through, a number of files, and at times we didn't. So I always prepared in the event this proposal were to move fast, that I would be knowledgeable enough to be able to brief. But in the end, we did not brief on this particular proposal.
But you do confirm that the package of documents that the committee received on this scandal, that there are 2 references to a briefing to the Deputy Prime Minister. One email indicates the briefing would have happened on April 23rd by the Deputy Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, which I presume is you. And second, there is an April 20th email that you authored that suggests that the WE charity was working with the offices of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. How could those documentary proof points suggest that there was a briefing of the Deputy Prime Minister if in fact it didn't happen?
Well, I think thank you for the question. I think that I always had to be prepared, and therefore, I always had to indicate and be ready to brief her on anything, because things moved extremely quickly. And I always wanted to make sure that the Deputy Prime Minister, the Prime Minister, they were prepared for any engagement that they would have with the Premier. And therefore, on any package that went forward from the federal government, I really took it to heart to be
all right.
prepared.
So you, but
and
you're,
in
but
the end, I did not.
No, if I
yeah.
could,
Yep.
you've gone way over and you're way off the question. The question was whether or not she was briefed. You're now claiming she wasn't, even though there's documentary evidence that she was. Maybe that riddle will solve itself some point, but you have not explained how it came to be in the first place. So I will move on to Madam Kavokovic. Was the $500 million grant to the We Charity approved by the Treasury Board?
I don't believe it got to the Treasury Board stage. We certainly had a funding decision. So the Minister of Finance and the Prime, that the next phase, of course, would be for the ESDC Minister to develop a contribution agreement. And that's what goes to the Treasury Board.
Well, of course, but there was a contribution agreement. It was signed by the government. The money was transacted to the We Charity, all of which would have required Treasury Board approval, as you just correctly pointed out. So my question was, yes or no, was there approval by the Treasury Board before the money went out?
I'm not sure, but I would have to confirm, but it sounds like it must in fact have been the case.
It must have been the case the Treasury Board would have signed off on this. Are you aware that Treasury Board officials reviewed the proposal and came to the conclusion that there was no evidence that, and I'm quoting now, ESD, the department that negotiated this contribution agreement, has not provided evidence to suggest that We Charities possess the capacity to undertake this work? Are you aware of that?
I am aware of it because I've been reading it in all the documents that were produced for FINA. So I am aware of it now.
Okay, but would you not have asked whether or not Treasury Board had done due diligence to find out if We Charity could deliver this program before you worked towards this grant?
I believe that Treasury Board, Secretariat, ESDC were asking the right questions that needed to be asked prior to giving their advice.
I understand that, but it turns out Treasury Board officials say that We Charity wasn't even capable of delivering this program, or at least there was no evidence that it could. Did you know that?
I did not know that at the time.
Right. Okay. So you and other members of the government have claimed that only We Charity could do this. Now we find out from the Treasury Board officials that, in fact, We Charity could not deliver this program. It sounds to me like your decision to move forward with this was not based on due diligence, but based on the cozy relationship between your minister and this organization. You said in an email, May 7th, that We Charity is connecting with my minister's office. They are all besties. Presume that means best friends. You were aware that the We Charity was best friends.
I think,
okay, I'll
the magnitude
wrap up.
of this question, I'm going to give Madam Kovich.
I'll wrap up in 3 seconds. You were aware that the minister's office was besties with We Charity, but you went ahead, and that's why you went ahead to give this money, even though Treasury Board said We
Chair,
Charity.
I'm sorry,
Madam
point of
Kovich,
order. That's more than 3 seconds.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Shanahan. I was just speaking at the same time you were. Madam Kovacevic, because of the magnitude of this question, I'll allow you to answer.
Oh, thank you. So, Mr. Poilievre, with respect to Treasury Board Secretariat and their interpretation and assumptions and whatever, I think it's best, obviously, I should not speculate. You should ask TBS. With respect to my email that you referenced, I would like to explain to the committee that, like I've said previously, my language is very casual. At this point in time, I am aware, as is in my previous testimony, that my minister's office had engaged with We Charity, and I am casually calling them besties, referencing simply that there is engagement with the charity.
Thank you very much. We'll
You're
now
welcome.
move on to Mr. Dong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank both public servants for accepting our invitation and be here.
Thank you very much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to see you again, even though it's only in virtual format. Can you tell the committee how long
Very much. Thank you very much. We'll move right then to the first round, and that's a 6-minute round, and Mr. Barrett for 6 minutes.
Sir, I don't have audio for you, Chair. Did you just give me the floor?
Yes, I just gave you the floor, Mr. Barrett.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yep,
Yes,
thanks.
Yes, 6 minutes, Mr. Barrett.
I would like to thank the witnesses for joining us today. My first question is for Ms. Fox. What was discussed at your April 20th meeting with WE?
We Charity gave me a call to tell me that they had proposals with respect to a youth entrepreneurship program, as well as a service program. It was a fairly brief conversation. They indicated that given my role as kind of former DM of youth, that they were curious to see if I had any time to look at their proposal and to kind of discuss it. And so it was fairly high level. They gave a sort of a high level sort of overview of both proposals, and then followed up with an email a couple of days later.
Did you help them focus their proposal during the course of that meeting?
I did not, no.
Okay, and we understand that we met with finance officials on that same day. Did you communicate with anyone at finance about that meeting?
I did follow up with an email to some of my colleagues, not on the 20th. On the 21st, I had an email exchange with finance to just say, this has come to my attention, because what I had told we was that all of the youth secretariat was now found at Canadian Heritage, that there was, a number of departments that may be interested in their proposal, given the entrepreneurship angle, given the youth service angle. And so what I had told we was that I would share that with colleagues, which I did. And then on April 21st, I did have an exchange with the Department of Finance with respect to the proposal.
Okay, thanks. It seems, based on those, the number of meetings they were having, that they had a clear desire to run the CSSG at that point. What was discussed at your April 23rd meeting when you briefed the Deputy PM?
So in the end, and thank you for the question, so what I did throughout the COVID pandemic, and what I continued to do throughout the summer, was very much focused on every time there was a government program that was rolling out, my responsibility was to make sure that I was sharing the details of that with provinces and territories ahead of a public announcement, to give them a heads up, to have an exchange about it. And then there was often follow-up after the fact. So over the course of the kind of between the 20th and the 23rd, I did a lot of work, but I did share it with different departments. And on the 22nd, I briefed provinces and territories on the student program announcement, but not in detail on the WE proposal. I thought that perhaps we would need to brief on the WE proposal at some stage, which is why I wanted to stay informed. But in the end, on April 23rd, ahead of the First Minister's meeting, we did not talk about the WE proposal. And therefore, we briefed on the other elements of the First Minister's meeting and not on the WE proposal specifically.
Okay. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
When you were the PM's deputy for youth, did you have any dealings with the WE organization?
I did, not a lot, but I did. I had dealings with a number of youth organizations across the country, and in part because over my time as Deputy Minister of Youth, we did two, I think, major projects. One was with respect to the Canada Service program, which in fact, we wasn't part of our group of organizations that delivered the program. We had 4-H, we had the YMCA, so there were a number of organizations. But when we launched our youth policy engagement sessions, we worked with a lot of youth organizations. So for instance, the Students' Commission ran the engagement process because we really didn't want to have the federal government be sort of the lead on engaging young people. We really wanted to take a different approach. So I did work with WE. I found out about kind of what they did, how they managed youth engagement. And we did have, when we launched our youth policy, we organized the youth summit, and that would have been May 2019. And we used some of the We Youth facilitators to manage the breakout sessions of our youth discussion points on the key elements of the policy. And so there was We staff that was engaged to come. And I did visit their Global Learning Center at one stage when I did a visit to Toronto, and I visited with a number of youth organizations, and that was one that I visited at the time.
Okay, did you discuss We or their projects with anyone in the Prime Minister's office? And my second question is, were you aware of the ties between members of the Trudeau family and the We organization, specifically speaking jobs?
So in the end, I did not brief members of the Prime Minister's office or the Deputy Prime Minister's office on the We proposal. And, you know, in terms of the relationships, I think it's the We organization has a number of relationships with figures across the country, including political staff. I did not know the details of those relationships in my role as Deputy Minister of Youth, no.
Okay, thanks very much. Ms. Kovacevic, in a May 7th email thread between you and Ms. Wernick, you were discussing increasing costs for We to administer the CSSG. You described the rising costs by saying, money, meh, no problem. And I have to ask if that was kind of the culture or the train of thought with respect to pandemic spending.
Thanks for the question. So firstly, that was absolutely not and continues not to be at all anybody's thinking with respect to pandemic spending. The money meh comment that you mentioned was literally, and my emails are all public. You know that I'm casual and very colloquial in my speech. It was a joke between peers. I might emphasize as well that in my colleague Rachel's email to me, when she talks about a distribution change, it is still within the $900 million that was approved by the minister and the prime minister in the set aside from the April 22nd announcement. So in fact, there was no more money at all. What she was talking to me about was entirely in scope within that $900 million.
I wanted to give you the opportunity,
which is a remarkable sum of money.
We're quite over it, but I felt that you needed the opportunity to answer that question. Now we'll move on to
News and Credence by Canadians for Canadians. Today's Space Cafe. Have a good day.